And welcome back to Central Coast Radio. We are going to take a look now at a brand new film that is out in cinemas. It's called Fisherman's Friends One and All. And now this is the sequel to the film Fisherman's Friends that came out a few years ago now. And it was a highly popular film. So much so that Fisherman's Friends One and All ended up being one of the films at this year's British Film Festival here in Australia. Now, for those that didn't see the first film, this follows the successful folk group from the UK that unexpectedly ended up with hit albums. They're called the Port Isaac Fishermen's Friends, and they're basically a group of fishermen who, for generations, their families had been singing sea shanties. Now, the guys all got together and decided to start recording music and ended up finding themselves on one of the biggest record labels in the UK. Their music became instant hits, and that was the story of the first film. Now, this time around, we see that their first album has been a huge success. They've been out on tour, and things haven't really gone to plan. They're not PC. That seems to be the major problem. We see very early on here that Leadville, played by Dave Johns, is giving an interview with a journalist, and he innocently says something that has a double meaning, and she takes it as the other meaning, and it ends up being on the front pages of the newspapers. Now, that is enough for the label to start questioning whether or not they are going to release the band's second album, which is a little bit of a shock for the leader of the group, Jim, played by James Purefoy, who really wants this album to come out because his father has passed away and he features on the album. Now, lots of other things are going on here as well. Rowan Sam Sainsbury finds his relationship suddenly in trouble because of some of the women that he's met on the road, and while nothing's happened, his wife and the mother of his child doesn't believe that, so he finds himself in a little bit of trouble as well. Add to that the fact that Jim is starting to battle with some of his own addictions and depression after the death of his father, and things start falling apart for the Fisherman's Friends. Now, to add to that as well, we have a few new characters pop up this time around as well. One of those characters is someone who's had trouble in her past as well. Her name is Aubrey Flynn, and she's played by Imelda May. She was a rock and roll artist from Ireland who herself got into trouble with addictions and ended up ruining her career. Now, she's moved to this quiet little bay to try and get away from everything, and she suddenly finds herself meeting various members of the Fisherman's Friends. There's also trouble that develops as well with the group when Jim is not accepting of a farmer joining the group to replace his father. He says that it's all about, this is a fisherman's group and not a farmer's group, and he doesn't want a farmer in there, but you can tell that mainly this is all about the fact that he doesn't want somebody in there replacing his father. Now, you could argue that this film, which is directed by Meg Leonard and Nick Moorcroft, Meg Leonard, this is her first film directing. It's also Nick Moorcroft's first film directing, but he did help write the first Fisherman's Friends film. You could argue that this film is somewhat of a walking cliche. You kind of know where the stories are going to go as soon as you start watching this film. But as we've found out recently with some films that have had their plots ruined by trailers that have exposed different things to the public, sometimes it's not the destination that's the best thing about a film, it's the road that you take to get there. And that's very much so with this film. You heard one of the tracks just before this that I played that is one of the tracks from the film, and it's things like the music of this film that makes this film such an amazing film. The track that we played before, of course, was Union of Different Kinds, and that is something that this group learn during this film, is that they are a union of different kinds. Everybody is different in the group, and that's something that they all have to try and get used to and embrace. You see some brilliant performances here. James Purefoy puts in an amazing performance as Jim, as his character goes through a range of different emotions, from wanting to give everything up to just battling his demons. Basically, he's got all these demons around him that he's trying to battle, and he's not sure how to get back on track. You also see a marvelous performance by Maggie Steed, who plays Maggie in the film as well. She is amazing with the way that she supports these guys and tries to help them out however she can. Those performances and those storylines, they're the things that make you forget that everybody that works at the record label in this film is a walking cliche. I'm sure that's not what the people are like in real life. Some of the record executives here are kind of portrayed as the bad guys, so of course you kind of just see a one-sided argument with why they're the way that they are. You don't really see that from any other point of view. The music in this is just absolutely amazing. In fact, when I sat down to work out what tracks we should play from the soundtrack on the show today, I was like, what am I going to play? There's so many great songs on here. But yeah, it's just one of those films where when you walk out of the cinema, you straight away get onto one of the streaming platforms and try and listen to the music, because even if folk music's not your kind of music, you will be humming these tracks when you leave the cinema. And I think that's one of the things I really liked about this film as well, was it explores some pretty deep topics. It explores the depression that somebody might go through when they lose a loved one. Often those relationships will be explored in movies, but it's very seldom it's a son mourning his father. I think that makes this film very, very special. I also like the fact that they've brought in the extra character as well, where you get to explore what happens to somebody after their career has fallen apart. There are so many artists out there from the 80s and 90s that have just been pushed over the edge now that we don't hear from anymore, and they have to learn to go back and live in society. So to have a character in there that's been through that, it's great to see. I also love the fact that this explores the whole notion of success. I mean, at the end of the first film, you would think that these guys have got a record deal for the rest of their lives, yet within the opening 20 minutes of this film, you see that record deal is under threat and that their second album might not even come out, which happens to artists all the time. I interview musicians a lot for work, and all the time musicians tell me that this record label suddenly didn't want to know me anymore, or I suddenly found myself without a label and I couldn't work out why. The fact that this film explores that is really good, and I hope a lot of younger people go to see this film. I get the feeling that this is going to be a movie that a lot of older people go to see, but it would be amazing if a lot of younger people went to see this and saw what happens in the music industry, because so many young people dream about being involved in the music industry. They don't always see the dark side of the industry, which this film well and truly explores. Like I said, this is a film that you think is a bit of a cliche and you think you know where it's going to end up, but part of that journey to get there is that you see some of these characters go through the absolute darkest pits of what it's like being in the music industry. The other thing that you're going to love about this film is the Cornwall coastline. It is a huge part of this film, and it is absolutely stunning. The cinematography in this film is amazing, so much better than what you would expect it to be in a film that's kind of a little bit of a fluffy piece, but it looks absolutely amazing. But like I said, what steals the show with this film is the music. The music is just absolutely stunning, and in a moment I'm going to play another song from the soundtrack. I'm going to play Cornwall, My Home, which has Imelda May singing on it as well with the Fisherman's Friends. Go out and see Fisherman's Friends one and all if you are looking for a good film that will surprise you, because there's a lot about this film to love. I'm going to give it 3 out of 5, but right now on Central Coast Radio, I'm going to play another Fisherman's Friends track. I'm going to play Cornwall, My Home, and I guarantee you'll be humming this song for the rest of the day. So once you go and see the film, go and get the soundtrack as well, because you definitely won't be disappointed. This is Cornwall, My Home by Fisherman's Friends featuring Imelda May.